Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's December 12th. This is lesson 1, and I'm doing the level 2 presentation now. Level 1 went very long, and I was just talking about, so this is the introduction, ideas about the chakras. Lesson 1 on level 1. I just got through going over what do the different colors signify, what are the basic proportions, and how does energy flow in a basic sense around the chakra system of your body. So then I was, from comments in the chat, and I'll keep going through the comments in the chat, was responding to one of the latest new age fads, which is quote unquote chakra removal. So first of all, I said, I'm somewhat dubious and skeptical of whether any practitioner is actually doing anything in terms of removing one's chakras. Like, give me $100 and I'll remove your chakras. Sure, I'll take $100 and I'll wave my arms around you and pretend to do something that's not actually happening. That might be going on. I'm more disturbed with the idea that there would actually be some removal of or destruction of this shape. This shape is an organizing principle of how energy flows around your body. And this is the level 2 presentation, so I'm going to go into how does energy flow around your non-physical body, because this is a sculpture that actually represents energy that is moving. So this is just a little static object, but the thing itself is actually dynamic, and it's not made of plastic or wire, it's made of time itself. Let's talk about plants. In plants, there are circulatory, some plants have a circulatory system with, like the way that we have arteries and veins. Plants have xylem and phloem that organizes their sap as it flows through their body. And some plants do not have that organizing principle of veins, like moss and algae and stuff like that. They don't have these kind of like tunnels or roads or linear connections of the plant. It's just kind of like a big pool of nutrients and stuff. Okay, it's not as organized. And so moss and algae, these are like little tiny things. If you want to build a big giant redwood tree, you have to get organized. You have to get organized the flow of nutrients and water or liquids around the plant. You have to have a vascular system, the xylem and the phloem, that makes the circulatory system work for a big giant redwood tree. Hi, Cheeky. Everybody, if you're new to class, this is my supervisor. This is Snoogly Wigglebottoms. Making sure that we're working hard. Oh, yeah, good girl. All right. Oh, thank you so much. So Snoogly Wigglebottoms had her little nap, and now she's ready to work. We're going to work, boss. Good. So yeah, if you want to build a big giant redwood tree that's 12 stories tall, the water could not reach the top leaves if you didn't have an organizing principle. So if you choose to remove your chakras, that would be like saying, I don't want to have my energy flowing in prescribed patterns. I just want to have it all kind of mushed together in one big, kind of pool or whatever. And that means that you would be limited in your ability to become more sophisticated and to develop into a larger format than what like a little tiny one-celled creature. You'd be devolving instead of evolving. You'd be going towards levels of simplification instead of levels of complexity. And according to my definition, like chakras, this means that you're alive. If you don't have chakras, you are not alive. So let's talk about this. Let's say you find a corpse. Okay, first let's say you have magic glasses. I have magic glasses that allow me to actually see chakras. And I'm looking all around at the world through my magic glasses, and I see, oh, look, Cheeky's got chakras. I wanted to say chakras got cheeky. Cheeky's got chakras. I've got chakras. That kid on the bicycle's got chakras. That tree, that bird, everybody's got chakras. And then I'm looking through my magical chakra glasses, and I look and I see whatever, a dead squirrel. Dead squirrel does not have chakras. Just like I was saying in a different video. So our DNA has a movement, it's dynamic, and it is dynamic and moving when we're alive. It's the definition of what it is to be alive. If our DNA does not move, then we don't move through time. It's called being dead. And having no chakras is a result of having no DNA movement. So chakras and DNA are both connected to time and to our movement through time. They are interrelated. If your DNA is not moving and alive and behaving and doing its dance. We define you as dead. And if you don't have any chakras, like if you do not have these are made of timelines. These are made of timelines. If you don't have timelines, like I don't know what you're going to live on. I don't know where you're going to live. I don't know how your time is going to flow. So I'm concerned with people that might be being taken for a ride or exploited in some way. I'm concerned by people that feel that they're actually getting some kind of freedom or energetic upgrade by devolving instead of evolving. And again, if you find this shape to be, oh, it's so limiting. Oh, this is Saturn's cube. Oh, it's not enough. Oh, I don't like it. There's nothing wrong with this shape, just like there's nothing wrong with this note. It's a lovely low vibration note. There's nothing wrong with this shape. There's something wrong with the way that this shape has been hijacked and deployed or misapplied to our experiences here in this world. So the answer to me is not to get rid of this shape. Like saying, veins, I hate you. Get doctors, take out my veins. This is not a fun, experience. Instead, transcend the necessity of having structure. This is the transcendence. So it's like saying, if you are frustrated because you want energy to flow from point A to point B and there's a blockade over here, instead of being like, that's it, get rid of all the road system because there's a roadblock there. That's what removing of chakras is like equivalent of saying. Instead of that, saying, hey, instead of getting rid of the roads because there's a blockade, how about I grow wings? And then I can get from point A to point B by flying there. And that's called being the flying rainbow lasagna. So I understand that people might be choosing the idea of chakra removal in response to the frustration or limitations of the situation that we're in, being genetically degraded, being limited and constrained. However, the conclusion, like what you choose to do in response, it is not my choice. And it's not a choice that I would encourage anybody to do. It's kind of like if you're chopping off essential anatomy, you're amputating essential anatomy. And I'm horrified by that. I'm like, no, don't get rid of your chakras. You need those. That's horrible. So, okay, wait, drink. I should go through the rest of these questions too. And there were questions also about the notes on the scale, and now we'll relate them to the layers of the chakras too. Oh, good to see you, Chloe. Okay, so this is a good question from Salu. She says, Aurora, why do people talk about widening the chakras? Is there some truth in that, or is it just nonsense? Again, it is not necessary to change the shape of this. So we don't want to amputate what we have, take away what we have, and it's not necessary to change the shape or widen this. What is necessary is to change its position, to make it behave differently. And I think that that's actually like it's a good thing, because it's not like you have to go get more parts at the chakra store. It's not like, oh, we're out of chakra, gravel or something like that. You don't need to buy anything extra, and you don't need to amputate anything that you already have. It is just a question of reformatting. So a good example is the idea of Rubik's Cube, that with Rubik's Cube, when you fix it, when you solve it, it's not like I chopped off parts of it. It's not like I added parts to it. What I had to do is rearrange what was there. This flying rainbow lasagna is a tool for rearranging on a genetic level and on a chakra or time level. And I want to get into how this actually flows. Okay, wait. Oh, I'll go into more questions. Let me go into the actual meat and potatoes of the presentation here. So, okay, level 1, I talked about this as being, this is like one of the basic building blocks of the language of vibration or the language of frequency. And being able to understand this is, empowering. It's like understanding the notes on the scale if you want to be a musician. And let me just drink a little bit more water. I went through very basically the idea of the color proportions and what each of the colors signifies. But I didn't get into exactly how energy flows. So basic recap is that we have red is the physical, orange, mammalian emotions, yellow, daily conscious waking intellect. Green is the clearinghouse, or like the CPU, central processing unit of your entire being, or the fulcrum, as a wonderful student gave me that word. It's the central processing house of your whole entire being. And then there's communication or truth. And then there is insight. And then there is your connection to the divine, or the connection to higher dimensional, less dense realms. So each one of those layers of reality is a layer of time. Big emphasis, big takeaway. This is your time body. This is your time body. Let's go to the images over here. These are all images of your time body. And when I give you these sculptures, I'm giving you static three-dimensional images, but it's essential to understand that the images, the things that they're actually representing are dynamic, that the time field and the chakras are actually dynamic. So first, okay, go into here. In level 1, I didn't get a chance to teach you my shorthand. And this is level 2, so it's recap for everyone who's at level 2, but level 1, let me, because I know you guys are all still logged in. This is a cross-section. Let me draw a better cross-section. Cross-section of my yellow sculpture that I always show in this class. You know, it's sometimes really hard to control this little thing. Very not that even little sculpture, but this is meant to be a cross-section of what I did. And I did do some of this last week, okay? So in that yellow sculpture, I have 4 vortices that go like this, right? And the time vortex itself, this little diagram that I'm gonna draw, is this at the bottom. And I did do this in the introduction. I'm going over it again, and it's recap for everyone who's at level 2. So now I'm gonna draw the time vortex over here. This is my simplified diagram. I should have done this in level 1. If we're beginning, this line down here is like year 0 or birth, and understanding that time moves forward in this direction in this diagram, and that this, let's get red, this red line over here, this is a flowing membrane, and I call it the flowing membrane of death. And it comes from here, this central convergence point, this central convergence point over here, and flows in this direction, flows away from the source or the central convergence point. It's where energy is coming from. And the whole idea is that we are intended to make like a loop coming from that emanator of consciousness into reality. And then we're supposed to start from down here and go up this central core timeline and never ever touch the membrane of death. And of course, you know, we do experience the membrane of death because our chakra system is askew. Instead of being in perfect alignment like this, going up the central core timeline, the chakra system is askew, and the pathway, instead of directly up the center, is continued loop, where you're constantly being born and then getting up to the membrane of death and dying and looping back around. And I'm showing you in cross section, but this is really comes from both directions. And what happens is first we have to fill up all of this area over here with experience and understanding before we are allowed to assemble and roll up the central core timeline. So that's for everyone who's level 1 to, you know, get you up to speed. So now level 2, let's talk about all this different stuff. How does energy actually flow around this yellow chakra system? Because I've up until this point been giving a very simplified understanding that we're just, you know, coming from, let me get a better color that you can see, that we're coming from here, and we're coming out into here, and we're coming over here, and we're going back up to here. That's definitely simplified. So, okay, now what I have to do, clear everything. Well, maybe you know what I can do instead? Hold on. Let me go to this picture. Instead of having to draw everything all out, I'll use a picture that I've already got prepared. Let's see. Where did all the pictures go? Oh, this one right here. Okay. So first, understand that the red line gets extended all the way out here, like all the way over to the side, you know, like this, this red circle. I could only fit half of it on that canvas. You're only looking at half of that red circle. And we understand that we would have a vortex up at the top, you know, like here's a vortex up here. And then here's another one of these time vortices down here. Okay. So how does energy actually flow through this shape? You have these different layers, 7 different layers. So it doesn't just go directly from purple to violet. It has, from purple to red. It has to circulate through all of these layers of being. And in other times, what I've done is a simplification where I just kind of show it, let me just grab a different color. Like on this little figure down here, I just kind of show it kind of like squiggles. Like it comes in and then it squiggles around like this, right? I just do a very, very simplified squiggling. Now you're going to get the actual pathway, not just a simplified squiggle. So first, energy comes from, I could put this dot over here, but I could also put this dot over here. That's technically the same position of the singularity. It comes from the singularity or the source or the center of all of this, everything. And I also show that like a big white dot over here. And the first thing it does is it comes, into your violet chakra. So here's, let's say, how can I show this happening? This white dot over here is a doorway that's like a portal. And every time you go through that doorway, you end up in a different room. So the energy impulse comes from the source, the 0th dimension, infinity, presence of everything, and it goes over here, and it goes through this doorway. And when it comes out into the level of violet. Let me change my color. You can't see that color, sorry. Let's try it again. It comes out here, and it goes around this level of violet. And it circulates around in a whole giant circle, right? Well, actually, it circulates in figure 8. So you can see it goes like this and it goes like this. Let me draw that a little bit better because neatness counts. Hold on a sec. So it goes in this figure 8 pattern, right? And then it gets back to the doorway. And when it goes through the doorway the second time, it does not end up in the same room. So again, this is like a revolving door that doesn't put you into the same lobby when you go through it the second time. The first time you go through that door, it puts you into the violet room. Then you go through that door, now you end up in the blue room. Now you go through the blue room. And then you go back to the door, and you go through the door, and the door does not lead you back to the blue room. Now the door leads you to the turquoise room. And you go through the turquoise room. Now you go through the door again. And now it leads you through the green room. Oh, now I'm going through the green room. And I go through the other side. And now I go through the door again. And now that door leads me through the yellow room. And now I go through the door again. And now it leads me through the orange room. And now I go through the door again. And now it leads me into the physical room, which is red. And I go all the way around here, and I circulate all around here. So that got to be a very messy drawing. Now let's draw it again. See if I can draw it again in a better way so that you can see it a little bit better. So this is what I've got, these cross section over here. What happens is it circulates from up here, or starting point over here, in a small figure 8, and then a slightly larger figure 8, and then a slightly larger figure 8, and then even bigger, and then even bigger, and then even bigger, until I'm at the outer edge of the figure 8. And then guess what? I reverse and I do the same exact thing again. So I choose a different color. Choose red. If I'm starting with an energetic impulse that comes from the physical, so let's say something like touches my skin, sunlight falls on my skin and it stimulates my skin and I feel it, right? That's an impulse that comes from the physical realm. So here's that energetic impulse from the physical realm that is making this beautiful figure 8 pattern. And then it goes through that doorway. It doesn't come out into the red room. It goes into the orange room. I'm not changing my colors, but you know what I'm talking about. Then it goes through that doorway again. It spirals inward and inward and inward in these figure 8 movements until finally it spirals back to that source, which is also the destination. So one of the big understandings here is basic, patterns that energy flows in the cosmos around this chakra system. It is a figure 8. Here I'm trying to draw it in a color that you can see, a figure 8, around and around and around like this. Okay. Wait, let me stop share. Here, I'll show you on the actual sculpture itself. I hope you can see in these lighting conditions. So energy is emitted from here. And at first, I don't have all the different layers in this, but it would first circulate around in the center here, and the center here getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until finally it would go all around the outside like this. And then, of course, energy comes from the outside like this and then circulates inward, 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 inward. So, okay, I want to talk about more on the pathways that energy follows there. But first, I want to talk about building the dimensions and how that sculpture is built by building the dimensions. So, yeah, and I'll go, oh my goodness, I'm taking this very long class. Thank you for being with me. Building the dimensions. First, I will point your attention to the work of Rob Bryanton. He's got a good video. I should remember to put the link in and everything. In case I don't, the video is on YouTube, and it's called Imagining the 10 Dimensions. And he's got some very good animations of this. And it's the idea of point, line, plane in building the dimensions. So I'm going to start off with this. I'm going to talk about the 0th dimension. Clear all of this stuff away. Hold on a second. Clear it all. The 0th dimension, that's that center of the yellow sculpture. This central convergence point at the center of this sculpture. It's 0 because it does not require any amount of information to describe the position of a point of energy in that spot. There's one dot. That's all. There's one dot. There's only one place to be in that whole entire realm. There's no other place. It's infinity. That 0th dimension, this is big, and I'll emphasize this many, many times in coming classes. The singularity or the source or that central convergence point or the 0th dimension, it is infinity. And it's also analogous to the place from which everything expanded in science's description of the Big Bang. It is 0 because it does not require any address. You don't have to put your name on and address on the mail in order to send it to your house. This is infinity house. Everything goes there. It's the center of the donut. So as I was drawing those figure 8s of how the energy flows, I'm drawing these figure 8s of various sizes and everything like that. They all go through that central dot in the middle. All energy flows through there. That's all possibilities and all probabilities, everything that can possibly exist, the potential for life existence. That's the 0th dimension. And the most important and most amazing thing that ever happened was when that little 0th dimension, that is everythingness, had the thought, what would happen if there was a little piece of me that wasn't here with everything, but was somehow not with everything? It could be any place. It could be this X over here. It could be this X over here. The point is, this little dot had to imagine something being not there. And then as soon as that happened, all you have to do is you got one dot, you got another dot, and you connect it with an infinite series of dots. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of dots, many, many, many points, makes a line. And then we have the 1st dimension. That is the invention of the 1st dimension. And the thing that happened that was so amazing with the invention of the 1st dimension was the idea of moving at 90 degrees to wherever you are. So if we're here in the house of everything, all we had to do, if this is, this orientation, move 90 degrees. That's not a very good angle. Here, 90 degrees, make that little box and move 90 degrees in this direction. And it could have been it could have been here, it could have been here, it could have been in any orientation. That is the basic idea of what we're doing. We're moving at 90 degrees to our 1st expansion. So the 0th dimension expanded into the 1st dimension. And that requires one piece of information. If I put a point over here, I have to have one piece of information to tell me where is the position of that line. Then if I go 90 degrees perpendicular to that line, I'm going in this direction, I'm making many lines. So here I'm making many lines. You can imagine many pencils lined up on a tabletop, or my fingers stuck together like this, making a flat plane. This is now a 2-dimensional flat plane. My pen is not working, hold on. Here's a 2-dimensional, this looks like a flat plane, like a piece of paper or a playing card. And we have to have 2 pieces of information to describe the position of a point on that plane. We got to have something that tells us about the x-axis and something that tells us about the y-axis. That's why that is the 2nd dimension. And then what is perpendicular to the 2nd dimension? It's the 3rd dimension, and that means we're moving upward in this direction. That is what happens if we stack up many pieces of paper. So let's get a different color here. Let's say I start stacking up paper like this and like this, or playing cards or pieces of plywood, whatever it is. I'm stacking them up until I get a cube. That's not a very good cube. Let me draw a better cube. Oops. Here. Cube. Like this. And this is, again, recap for everyone who's an expert in this class, but I'm going somewhere with this. Cube is a 3rd dimensional object. So we're really, really familiar with the first, second, and third dimension because we exist in third dimensional objects. So here, this requires 3 pieces of information. We got the X, got the Y, and we also got the Z. And we have to say, where is this little dot relevant to these 3 levels of context? Now, if you were in my studio and I asked you this question, I would be playing a little trick on you. I'd say, everybody point to the 4th dimension. And you'd be like, Aurora, like, I don't know what to do. Like, stop. This is making me feel bad. And I said, that's okay. I played a little joke on you because I don't actually have a clock on the wall. In order to point to the 4th dimension, you'd have to point to a clock. No one wears a watch anymore. So it's a challenge. The 4th dimension is time. So if I just drew that little red box, wait, let's do this for consistency here. If I just drew that little red box, that is the 3rd dimension, right? That's 1 box. So this is really, really important because lots of people who are truth seekers or, you know, ascenders learning about stuff are saying things like, that's so 3D, that's so 3D, like we're in 3D, but we're moving up to 5D, right? And so they're using this as a shorthand, just like the way that low vibration has been used as a shorthand, meaning distorted. 3D is being used as a shorthand to talk about mundane physical reality. And the truth is, you are 3rd dimensional, but you're not just a 3D object. You're moving through time. This is where we're starting to get up to our understanding of what time is. So if you were only a 3rd dimensional object, you would not be actually moving through time. You would only exist for the briefest moment, and then you would pop out of time. You would only exist for a flash of, you know, a brief second, because in order for you to move through time, you have to have a bunch of these. You have to have a whole bunch of boxes lined up in a timeline. So this is, let's say this is 12 o'clock, and this is 12:01. It's hard to write with my pen. 12:01, 12:02, 12:03. These are all moments of time. And as we make each of these individual boxes, these boxes, you could think of them as like train cars of reality that are connected together in a flow that we experience as the flow of time, okay? So each one of these boxes is a moment. And our consciousness jumps from box to box in order to experience the flow of time. You are not merely a 3-dimensional object. You are your consciousness that has a 3-dimensional body, and you are jumping. This is your red dot of consciousness. You are jumping from moment to moment. You're not in the same body that you were in when we first started this video conference, however many hours ago. You've actually been jumping your body quite consistently forward through time. And that, first of all, that is called the 4th dimension. So let's write down 4, because it involves 4 pieces of information to determine the point, the position of a point. If we want to talk about the position of this red dot over here, we have to have, where are you in the x-axis? Where are you in the y-axis? Where are you in the z-axis? And then where are you through time? Are you at 12? Are you at 12:01, 12:02, 12:03, 12:04, 12:10 million? Okay, this is the 4th dimension, and we occupy the 4th dimension, that we are already in the 4th dimension. So people that are in the new age and they're talking about the 3rd dimension, you're trying to become higher dimensional, you are already 4th dimensional. In fact, you're actually already 5th dimensional. So this can be considered a line. This line of boxes where we're jumping from moment to moment, we can now consider that a line. It's a timeline. And that timeline is analogous to any one of these lines over here. So that's why Bryanton talks about point, line, plane. And we keep going back through those 3 shapes. So we started with a point, then we moved to a line, then we moved to a plane, then we stacked up a bunch of planes into a cube, then we lined up a bunch of cubes into a line, and now what we're going to do is line up a bunch of cube lines. And that is the 5th dimension. So I'm now lining up a bunch of timelines. And you can imagine this as being analogous to trains at the train station. This is a big flat plane. It's getting kind of messy here. A big flat plane, let me erase a little bit, that worked pretty good. Almost. That was pretty good. this is a flat plane where, let's say, we're starting at the train station over here, and all of the trains move forward through time in this direction, going over here. And each of the lines, each of the train lines represents a different series of events in reality. Okay, so we've made it. This is the fifth dimension. I want everybody not to be too literal, though, because I'm drawing planes and I'm talking about playing cards and flat pieces of paper. What really is happening in the fifth dimension is it is an area of pure potential. When I hold up this yellow sculpture, I say all the time that this is a representation, a diagram of possibilities and probabilities. It represents potentials of the future. So part of the potentials of the future is these are uncollapsed waveforms. So now we have to talk about, go to my face so you can see me a little bit better. We are surrounded by a sea of uncollapsed waveforms that are possibilities and probabilities. They don't look like things. They don't look like a chair, a room, a face, a dog. They don't look like that. They are potential. It's abstraction. It's not a thing yet. It's not a sandwich yet that you can actually eat. It's the potential for sandwich. So the way that I like to describe this, if we say, I'm making a timeline, right? This timeline is like my skinny finger over here. And it's like a piece of French bread that we're baking at the bakery. And the French bread, we have I don't want you to think that the fifth dimension is like having many different breadsticks lined up on the shelf. And you get to choose which breadstick you're going to eat for the day. That's not what it's like. So we're using analogies here. The fifth dimension in the bakery of the world is actually more like the ovens. It's actually more like the place of potential. So in the bakery, you have all of the bread that's out on the shelves. That's the fourth dimension. That's everything that's already been baked. It's all the potentials that are already realized, and you can go and experience them. The fifth dimension is an area of pure potential that exists in the back of the bakery, where there's the ovens and the flour and the water and all of the potential ingredients for reality. And that what happens in the fifth dimension is the dough of reality is made. This is like uncollapsed waveforms. And then observership. That's you and me. It's the ovens in front of our eyes. The act of observership, looking at the uncollapsed or perceiving the uncollapsed waveforms, collapses those waveforms into actual stuff, into actual sandwich that I can eat. So this is, again, a quantum understanding that reality exists in a state of potential until we, as experiencers, observers, experience and observe reality, making it into a solidified actual event that we can experience. So this is big because this has to do with our own creative act, the act of observership being a creative act in solidifying those possibilities into actual physical reality. So to make the distinction, because I'm using these analogies, like you have one line of bread, but then you have many lines of bread. I don't want you to think of those many lines of bread in the fifth dimension. I don't want you to think of them as like sitting on a shelf ready for you to eat at any moment. And this is more the sense of in each moment you are baking a bite of bread. So now let's go back to, oh yeah, good girl. Back to the whiteboard. Do your thing, come on. So this is the fifth dimension, the bakery, where all of the bread is actually baked and where it all comes together. In this diagram, I'm representing that as a line of many breads lined up together. And then what happens next is we stack up many layers of bread. And at this point, I also like to use the analogy of fabric or tapestry, that you can imagine, you have, when you make fabric, you have threads that go up and down, you have threads that go left to right. So we have essentially a piece of tapestry here. We have like a piece of fabric. And to go into the sixth dimension, what we then do is stack up many layers of fabric. So it's back to that stacking up of planes. So we're like stacking up playing cards or stacking up pieces of paper. And what happens is we end up making a cube. We're back to having a cube, except this is a cube. Oops. This is a cube that is made out of all of these unbaked breads of potential. This drawing is getting very messy, but that is the sixth dimension. And so this has everything to do with, what does it mean? Let me go back to my face. What does it mean if people are talking about meeting fifth dimensional beings, meeting sixth dimensional beings? So a sixth dimensional being, what their perception would be like. Imagine if you could see a painting as it's being painted. And you could say, well, first the artist painted this, and then it looked crappy, and they wiped it all out. And then the artist painted this, and it looked slightly better, and then they wiped it all out. Being able to see all of the various iterations or versions of reality that were created. So the sixth dimensional viewpoint would be a creature that can say, first, I saw these uncollapsed waveforms of potential collapsed into this reality. And then the dice rolled again, everything changed again, the Rubik's Cube got changed around again, and then I saw all of these potentials collapsed into this layer of reality, and then everything changed again. I saw these. So it's kind of like saying, I'm looking from above, and I can see the flow of a river. And I can say, oh, the river flows like this, it flows like this. But I can also see 100 years ago, the river used to flow like this, all the way out to here. And then something happened and it changed its path over to here. Now it flows here. And I can also tell that at another time, the river's going to flow, like this in a completely different way. So this has everything to do with our timelines and what we're experiencing, that it's not set in stone. That's very fluid and it's very ever-changing. So as I'm giving you the point, line, plane, I'm drawing it all as cubes. But I don't want you to get too stuck in the literalism of that, because it's actually all shaped like circles and spheres. And I'll give you closure up to the 10th dimensions. Like theoretically, we could do this infinitely. It keeps on going more and more. So we've got a layer of tapestry. Many, many layers of time tapestry get stacked up together. And then that's the sixth dimension. And one of the takeaways I want to share with you is the idea of an event, like this bright green event, penetrating many layers of time, like a needle sewing through these many different layers. That, let's say this green event is like a nuclear event. So if it's sewing through these various different layers, every place where it penetrates a layer of time tapestry, there's a nuclear event. So on one version of reality, it might be a nuclear bomb exploded. On another version of reality, it might be, oh, a nuclear breeder reactor has melted down. On a different version of reality, it might be radiation falls from space. Your space uranium falls on Earth. Like the common thread, tying it all together, is nuclear event. But that nuclear event can be expressed differently in the details, the vagaries of it in different timelines. And also, this is how we can understand timeline bleed through. So just like if you've ever had a thick pad of paper and you have a really heavy black marker and you write or draw on the top of the paper and it bleeds through to the other underlayers, this happens in reality. If this is my big black heavy marker that I'm scribbling with on this top layer of reality, but that ink can be affecting this layer down here and this layer down here and this layer down here. So now we begin to understand that a lot of the time, the events that we're experiencing in our reality are interreactive, interrelated with, or in response to events that are happening on parallel or concurrent timelines. And so the sixth dimension is this, many stacked up layers of time, like kind of in a cube. And then what's the seventh dimension is if we stack many, many time cubes next to each other. So we've got stacks of tapestry, stacks of tapestry, stacks of tapestry. Now we have tapestry cubes that all are pointing in a line. And that is the seventh dimension. And when we put many, many seventh dimensional tapestry cube lines next to each other, we get a tapestry cube line plane, and that is the eighth dimension. And then if we stack up many, many layers of tapestry cube line planes, then we get another square, another cube that is the ninth dimension. And you can understand that this can continually, you can build really endlessly. This is the structuring of reality. So, okay, I know that's a lot. That's a lot to get through, and it's valid and it's worthwhile because we're establishing terms. What do I mean when I say the third dimension? What do I mean when I say the fourth dimension? What do I say when I mean the fifth dimension and higher? This also means, first of all, like, oh my God, I've spoken about this a lot. I don't mean to be beating a dead avian, but this idea of the blue avian cult, that certain, rather well-known members of the UFO disclosure community have come forward to say that they've had personal contact with these sixth dimensional, higher dimensional beings that look like large blue feathered birds. Hold on. And I'm trying to tell people, like, as soon as I heard that, I knew that this was nonsense. I knew that this was, intentional, malevolent nonsense. Because if you saw with your physical fourth dimensional eyes here on this timeline, a higher dimensional being, it would not look like an embodied being. Like, I have a body, I got a body. It's hard to do, but I got one. They look like slices. Because if you live in this plane here, and I'm this object, and I'm moving in and out, up and down through your plane, you will only see slices of me, like a CAT scan. You'll see slices of me, but not the totality of me. You cannot perceive all of what I am because I am a higher dimensional being. So no, if you perceive a higher dimensional being, they will not look like they have one face and two arms and two legs, because you're going to be seeing CAT scan slices of them. You might be seeing the inside of their tummy. Like, you're not going to, it's not. So now we have to understand that we're using a different level of perception than our physical eyes. When we interact with higher dimensional beings, we're using our eye of insight, and it becomes necessary to cultivate and perfect our higher faculties to be able to really talk with higher dimensional beings, and it's how we become higher dimensional beings. I'm going to get to the chat, and thank you for this. Is, I know, a very long lesson, a long class. Now I want to get to, we did the 0th through the 10th dimension. Now I want to get to, how is this created, because it relates to the 0th dimension and the dimension building that I just shared with you. How is that yellow sculpture created? I have to clear all this out. Hold on a second. Clear it all out. Because we start with, get a better color. A dot. And that dot travels around in a circle. And it makes, like a flat circle. So this is like a hula hoop, right? So this is how we started with the dot. That's like the 0th dimension. This hula hoop going around in one circle like that, that's like the 1st dimension. And then we take that 1st dimension and we spin it around. We make many hula hoops. So I have another hula hoop going like this, and I have another one going like this, and I have another one going like this, and I have another one going like this. I know the drawing is a little bit crappy, but you know what I'm talking about. And if we make enough hula hoops like that, then we get the donut shape. All right. And I'll show you another way that we're starting to build these layers of reality. Wait, clear. We start off with one hula hoop like this. And then we can also make a sphere. So I think this will make more sense to you. If I put several of these hula hoops together, and I'll also draw these contour lines, I've just created a sphere. So we started with a dot, went to a line, now we're into a sphere, which is 3-dimensional. And then if I take that sphere and I make it spin around in a circle, what happens is I end up with the donut shape. So I've got essentially like a spinning ball that spins around in a circle, and it leaves in its wake a donut. Okay, and look at that. We have a donut. This is the cake of the donut over here. And then this part over here would be like the donut hole, right? But I consider that to be half a chakra, because we don't have the other one that's at 90-degree angles. So how do we get the other one at 90-degree angles? We then take this whole apparatus and spin it end over end, kind of like I like to say like a tumble salt. If you look at my pen, I'm spinning it end over end, end over end. So when we spin it end over end, this red dot over here starts to move forward like this and make a curved line and go to this dot over here. And then it also goes around the back and it makes another vortex there. And this one does the same thing. So we get another vortex like that. And then that is what ends up giving us the complementary vortex that makes the full entire chakra shape. So to take you through that again, starting with a dot that then travels around in a circle, that then spins around and becomes many circles and makes a sphere. That's a crappy sphere, but you know what I'm talking about and you're smart. There's a sphere. And then that sphere spins around in a circle, creating the donut, the half donut down here. And then that half donut spins end over end and creates the rest of the chakra shape. I know it's a lot of words to describe what's going on here. The reason why I'm giving you all these words is to get the idea that just like a tornado or a water spout or any naturally occurring vortex, All of this is created with nothing more than the material spinning amidst itself. So in terms of making a tornado, it is the atmosphere spinning amidst itself that is making that shape. In terms of making this yellow shape, it is time and consciousness that is spinning amidst itself, making this shape. So when I talk about this membrane over here, this boundary, it's not a thing. It's not like it's made out of concrete or, hemp or, cotton or anything. It's not made of stuff. It is analogous to the meniscus. I don't have a glass of water. I have my cup over here. So when you have water in a cup, there's surface tension at the top layer of where the water is. There is a slight thickening of the water and it makes kind of a lens, and it's called the meniscus. So this world between worlds, this membrane over here, it's a meniscus. It's nothing more than a layer of time, the thickening of the layer of time that happens due to this circular motion, to this movement motion. So I said that meniscus is the membrane of death, right? That's, one of the things to understand. And I also said that we experience or define death when there is no more movement through time. So this shape is created entirely from movement, awareness spinning amidst itself in the time field. If there is no movement, there's no more chakras. Got it? If time isn't moving anymore, if there's no flow, it's like if atmosphere is not flowing, you cannot have a tornado. In order to have tornadoes, you have to have lots and lots of wind, lots of atmosphere flowing. So if your DNA is not dancing, if your time is not flowing, you don't have chakras. You don't have chakras moving. You don't have it. This is all upheld by its spin, like a ballerina dancing and spinning around endlessly, or like the spin, the undecaying spin of an electron. And this all relates to electrons too. And I'm going to get to your questions. Okay, wait. So this is level 2, and I know in the previous level, everyone was asking me about the layers of reality and the tones of music and harmonic overtones. I have a whole teaching about this. This is just the intro, but let's say that in our understanding of the layers of reality, from the physical up through the completely abstract non-physical, that these relate to auditory visual waves that we understand as different colors, the different flavors that our eyes can taste, but they also exist as different sound frequencies that our ears can hear. So I have arbitrarily, according to my understanding of the piano, I'll show you down here on my piano keyboard. I think you can see, there's Cheeky. All right, cool. Oh, that's good. You can actually see things really well. So to go with, here, can you see this? Red over here. I have arbitrarily denoted red as being aligned with C, because mostly in music in the West here, we start with C, C, D, let's go lower, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, back to C. Can you see that? So this is a C down here, and this is a C up here. So in my octave of, the human energy system, this would be white light, because red plus orange plus yellow plus green plus blue plus indigo plus violet equals white light. So that would be what I call the human octave. Everything within this layer of reality is this slice of reality, the slice of the frequency pie, is what we define as being a human. And anything that's up here, look, this is higher than human. We would call that suprahuman, superhuman. And anything that's lower than this, we would call that subhuman. We would call that areas of super density or flowing so slowly that they are not in the slice of reality pie that we define as human. So again, this is not universal information that I'm giving you in terms of saying that C is red. That's my personal arbitrary association, and that then D would be orange and E would be yellow. F is green. G is this light blue. A, that note of unconditional love, would be dark blue. And then B would be this violet, or connection to the higher dimensional less dense realms. And then, of course, in the piano keyboard way that it is structured, then it cycles back to C. and then goes back up through all the notes again, and then back to C. So there, and that is the way that nested light waves and frequencies work in the higher dimensional realms. That is how this all happens. Just like you have the point line plane, nested fractal realities. That's just like those Ukrainian nesting matrushka dolls. The bigger doll, you open it up, has littler until you get to a tiny little doll inside. That's what all of this is like. So you have our physical chakra, and then the other chakras that are nested inside of it, all the way down to the tiniest one, and that all of these are harmonically proportionate. And so that when I was talking about, if we have the largest wavelength is red, and then it all goes down to violet, which is 1/7 of the largest wavelength. First of all, I didn't invent that, and I can't take the credit for that unless I define my identity as God, the divine being. That's the composer that made all of this. I perceived this language, and I learned this language, and then it is my utter joy to share it with others. I make my paintings and everything. Those are examples of this language. I like teaching other people to read. So that is kind of what these lessons are like. These are like the learning how to read higher dimensional stuff. Let me get to questions, because I know this is becoming a long recording, and I know there's lots of good stuff going on, and I make squinty faces because I'm trying to focus over here. Okay. Make sure I get to don't miss anybody. Okay. Oh, okay, interesting. So Joelle was going back to the chakras in the back of the head. Joelle says, I've heard the opening at the back of the head called by one of my teachers, the feminine entrance into the brain. Very interesting. Yeah, so everything, this over here, and even to the side, and even to the top and bottom, this is all insight. So your insight is a very crucial aspect of energetic anatomy, and that's why it's been so heavily attacked and assaulted, let's say, because if you wanted to really disadvantage someone, what's the first thing you do is you throw dirt into your enemy's eyes so they can't see. They can't see who it is. So that is essentially what happened with, warning, lesson 18 information, the planetary invasion. Planetary invasion, the invaders came here, and the very first thing they did was they threw dust into their enemy's eyes so that we couldn't see who they were and who's invading. And then the next thing that they did once they blinded you was to say, hi, we're friends, knock, knock, knock. Can we come in? It's like, oh yeah, of course. I mean, we can't tell who you are. So it's just very easy to come inside once you do that, and then to, totally disadvantage or disempower. So one of the most crucial things that we can do from our present level of experience is to reawaken our insight and our higher faculties and begin to use that to guide us through time. So on a very positive note, so I'm here with everyone. I'm submerged within this socioeconomic matrix, and I've got all the challenges that everyone else does, even though, I'm a galactic walk-in, and I'm not usually experiencing reality at this level. And so I have had tons of attacks from synthetic telepathy, static on the line. It's really, really hard for me to connect directly to the stellar network. I'm telling you guys all of this because I don't want you to think that it's just you or that I have this super easy time of it. It's challenging for everyone. It's like if it's a cloudy day, the cloud is blocking out the sun for everyone. It's hard for everyone to both get that information and send our signals back over to there. So that's not just you. And also in the past couple of weeks, I have experienced a great deal of lifting of the dark clouds. There used to be a lot more obstructions between my own consciousness and the sun and the stellar network. And I'm now seeing those inner obstructions being removed or superseded. So huge, big, positive thumbs up, encouragement information going to everyone. And, I'm not a person that gives out hopium. I'm not a person that says everything is going to be really great when, or everything is going so great, or there, dear, don't worry. I don't BS you in that way. I only give you really, these are like battle reports, even though, the language of war, but these are like battle reports of what is going on. We've won some very, very decisive victories. And that's crucial. Because if you control information, then you control a great deal of reality creation. If I tell you never buy any food that's red, it's totally poisonous. And if you believe that, then you'll be like, okay, I'm not going to eat tomatoes, I'm not going to eat peppers, there's a lot of red things you won't be eating because I gave you that erroneous information. So if each one of us is able to activate this insight and see clearly and perceive clearly and understand the world clearly, that is a huge victory of being able to, understand what's really going on and not be fooled by imposters. Cassie says, Salut, I'm very new to this, so I might be off the mark. I'm still learning meditation, and the lights I was referring to are in the physical sense. I don't see any colors to them. They're just white dancing lights. Could be totally unrelated. So yeah, Cassie, I would say that that's what science might describe as neurological activity. Like, oh, it's just your stupid neurons dancing around inside of your eyes. I don't know what you're thinking about. But they're really dancing in a pattern. Like your neurons aren't dumb, and you on a supra-conscious level are very intelligent. So it's more a question of us just trying to figure out those patterns by being good students. So this is Aurora. Why do people talk about widening the chakras? We talked about that. You know what I would say a better description in terms of improving the health and whatever, expression, the making our chakras more functional. Like we could talk about making them act better, function better, be more efficient, be more effective. I don't mean to like police anybody else's language or anything like that. My experience is not one of simplistic like opening or closing. And the reason why I think it's important to be precise about what we're talking about, I think we're giving people false expectations of what they're doing with their own body. It's kind of like if you had never had sex and someone is telling you, oh, you're going to experience this and it's going to feel like this and this and this and this. It's like, I think you're setting people up for, a distorted experience if you're not describing it accurately. And this is, every much as personal and, important as experiencing your own sexual feelings. Yeah, so I don't want to like cast aspersions upon other teachers, but because people are entitled to their own viewpoint and their own way of describing all of this. But I will say, go for your own personal experience. Like, don't put too much stock in other people's description of what the experience is like. Have your own experience and then be able to understand it from that viewpoint. Yvette says, I hear repeatedly that we have implants. Oh, this is good. Great. Quote unquote, that serve as vortexes, which funnel out our energy from us to quote unquote them. 2 in the frontal lobe, 1 in the back of the head, and 1 in the third chakra. Is this true? If so, how do you remove them? Good question. So now we're on the topic of quote unquote chakra implants. I would say instead of calling implants, what I want to say is that there are erroneous thought patterns, like wrong notes that we are playing with our minds. And because, why do I not want to call them implants? It makes it sound like there is like a gun or a bullet or some metallic object inside of you. And that's not how I perceive them. All of the wibbly wobbling, all of the destabilization of the chakras comes from thought energy. It comes from the structure of what is believed, and then also putting energy through that structure. So let's say you've got a sprinkler system in your garden. That is the actual structure of how water flows, and then the water that actually flows through the sprinkler system. And I'm sorry, I'm like falling over my words here in order to try to say this effectively. Erroneous thought patterns bring us down dead ends. They make us hit into the membrane of death. They make our cars drive off the edge of the cliff instead of staying on the road of time. And the way to improve this is to no longer think erroneous thought patterns. So one erroneous thought pattern is the idea of the necessity of death. That gets put into us in a pretty early age here in this world. And I talk about everybody, like, maybe your goldfish dies or grandma dies and you're a little baby and you say, where did goldfish go? And maybe your mommy says goldfish went bye-bye. And this is the beginning of understanding death. So we could think of death as like an implant, but it's not like, do you need to go to someone and get your death implant removed? That's not my understanding. It is my understanding that what you need to do is refine your thought patterns to say, oh, death is not inevitable. Death is an option, in all of these other circumstances, but death is not inevitable. I don't know if I did this in this lesson, but you hit the membrane of death if you're askew, but if you're perfectly in alignment, then you don't have to die. So it's not like I had to remove something from your mind in order to get that thought across to you, or in order to write you from this position into this position. I didn't have to like take out your brain or, cut you open or take out metal or anything like that from your mind. I had to correct or refine your perspective. So I think it's maybe better language, more efficient language to use to say that there are erroneous thought patterns, erroneous behavior patterns, and that a lot of them do arise from our genetics, and they also come from our parents and other socialization. So they're internal, like you can have them written inside of you, but then they are emphasized and re-educated to you in your life experience externally from mom and dad and school and religion and government. So all of these things will reiterate the necessity of death to you. So it takes a lot of you inside saying, wait, where did this idea of death come from? And how can I supersede it? And pretty much like getting rid of programmings. So that's the whole idea. Like if you're going to pay someone else to get rid of your implants, it's like that it's like if I'm playing wrong notes, here I'm going to play some wrong notes. I'm playing the song, guys. I'm playing. And it's like, no, Aurora, you're playing wrong notes because I'm playing. That's a wrong note. I'm supposed to play. That's a right note. I didn't have to remove anything from me in order to play. I needed to be corrected. Like I needed to change my, I need to refine my understanding and change what I'm emitting, but not necessarily, have something removed. So if someone's paying, if you'd be like, hey, pay me $100 to remove my implant, like you don't actually have to have something removed. You do have to change and shift your perspective, and then you have no more wrong notes and instead you play right notes. So, okay. Oh, that's a good question. So Joy is asking, can doing the Ankh exercise help to realign us? I do the Ankh exercise as part of sun gazing. And doing sun gazing can absolutely help to realign you, or let's say nourish you into righteousness. Because I think a lot of what is going on in our consciousness right now is the end result of a type of like starvation for real ideas, real food ideas, that if we're not given that real, nourishment from the sun, then we kind of get junk food ideas. So, and the junk food ideas, they are distortions of that original intelligence. So stop getting your information and nourishment from like third parties. Go directly to the farmer, go directly to the sun and get all that information directly from the sun. Oh, good to see you, Ben. I'm happy that you made it here. Pedro says, you are having electric problems at home? Let's rip the electrical cables. That's what I think about taking out chakras. Yes, that is exactly how I see all of this. And again, like I'm not trying to cast aspersions upon other people that are doing energy work or chakra work or anything, but I want to say be super skeptical, because there's, I think, a lot of people that are charging money for things that they're not either they're not actually doing the things that they say they're doing, or they're not doing them responsibly. And it's kind of like, if someone asked me, like, pay me $100 to take out my chakras, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, that would be totally unethical. And also, like, I don't believe that you can actually do that. I think that there's a lot of unethical things that are going on. I'll just leave it there. Jen, even the people who believe that they are awake are still asleep. That's interesting. Jen is saying, living in this world where so many are still asleep, would that be the reason for the feeling of the yellow being uncomfortable? Oh, and then Salu is saying, so many are still asleep. The reason why your yellow chakra might feel uncomfortable is because we've had a lot of our software, a lot of our thought structure degraded and constrained by our genetic structure. So my daily waking intellect also feels uncomfortable. That's why I like to paint and play music and do whatever I can to get out of my daily waking intellect. And my least favorite thing is when I have to do my banking or whatever, fill out paperwork, be in my intellect, like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. Yes, and I do believe that we can reprogram or refine our yellow level of intellect. It doesn't have to be degraded or distorted, but it is a lot right now. And that makes it hard to speak through language and also get thoughts across to other people through their intellectualism. So I don't write books, and books involve language and the distortions of language. I would happily write a book that's all about pictures and diagrams and, use that in order to share things. But I find words and language very distorting and kind of like gives a lot of friction to my mental energy. And I would just really prefer to sing and make music and make artwork as expressions of truth, as opposed to trying to appeal to someone's intellect. I think artwork and music, these bypass the intellect, which is so distorted on its basic level. Joelle says, for me, it's not like feeling an eye opening, but if I get still enough, I start to see on my inner screen very vividly swirling colored lights. Hold on a minute. I got to break in and say, seeing on the inner movie screen. So that is our imagination and is connected to our insight. But a lot of my personal experience doesn't involve the inner movie screen at all. So that is very big. I want to say to everyone, if you are having inner imagination experiences, like if you are, whatever, you think you're projecting out of your body and you're going to visit someplace or you're going to go meet with space aliens, if you perceive that you are in a room or perceive that you are talking to beings who are third dimensional, like I got a face and two arms and two legs, that is a interpretation through anthropomorphic filter. That's not seeing the abstraction of what you're actually experiencing. So huge yellow caution flags, because until you get to the level of seeing on the abstract level, like just color and form or tone and, like polygons moving, if you're still seeing things on the level of faces and rooms and objects, like a room that you sit in, that you occupy with a body, it's very easy to be distorted, because to be misled, because there are beings that use technology who are really super sophisticated, and they have the capacity to project onto your inner movie screen. I don't want to freak anybody out by saying that, but in the same way that there can be intrusive thoughts. If you have an intrusive thought that says, you want to eat an egg, I want to eat an eggplant right now, but you're like, I hate eggplant. That's not my thought, right? You know that that's an intrusive thought. And in the same way, if someone projected an image of an eggplant onto my inner imagination screen and I didn't initiate that, I can say, well, that's kind of interesting. Someone is, hijacking my inner movie theater and putting their own projections in there. That happens a lot. It happens all the time. There's malevolent beings that have technology that can do that. So that's why I, tell people, keep on working on your insight and refining it, and get to the point where what you're seeing on your inner movie screen is not through your anthropomorphic filter. And that's like the most perfect information that is it's very hard to distort. That's like 1 + 1 = 2. It is hard to distort that at that level. So back to what Joelle was saying about seeing on your inner movie screen, colored lights, geometry, faces, and beings of all kinds. She says, but I have to sit long enough to get all of the outer environmental light out of my eyes and my mind settled and peaceful, and then the inner light starts appearing on my mind screen. So yeah, I'm not telling you not to do that. You're allowed to do what you want to do, but just yellow caution flags on if you're seeing faces or rooms or places, that it might be distorted. It might be distorted through your own personal filter of interpretation, or that these things might be intrusive, not actually arising from you. So it takes a lot of work to be a virtuoso and to have the discernment to be able to tell what's arising internally, what is divine, what's part of the symphony, and what is static on the line. Salu is saying, yes, it's important not to get carried away with your imagination. I think I'm agreeing with you, and Salu, I think a lot of people that are experiencing stuff through their insight here are doing what I define as flights of fancy. And a lot of the time, this is unethical, again. So if you have some kind of hypnotherapy session, someone is like, oh, I'm going to take you on a guided meditation, and you were Queen Cleopatra in Egypt. Yes, I see you on the Nile. Like, all of that is unethical. And it has to do with flights of fancy, and a lot of the time coming through your personal interpretation filter and your cultural interpretation filter, all of that stuff. You got super yellow caution flags on all that stuff, because you're playing with fire. Here, just one very brief example. I have a friend of mine who had a reading, and she was told that she's one of the people that in another life pressed the button to drop the bomb on Nagasaki. And I think she carries a lot of guilt in this life because of that. That is manifesting as various health issues. And I take issue with the idea of telling her that, like, you got to give people balance. If you're going to say, like, yeah, you dropped the Nagasaki bomb, but you also did all these other wonderful things as other life experiences. You can have a huge impact on someone's life if you give them partial information and partial truth. Even if you're trying to do really good, you're not trying to, steal from someone by telling them something false. You have to be responsible by what you're telling to other people. And if they're not seeing it with their own insight and they're paying you to perceive it for them, and then you tell them this and then it ruins their health like that, I think that I have big concerns with that going on. Okay. All right. Chiki, I just want you to know everybody's super excited when you show up on camera. I'm reading all the comments now. That is good. She's so happy. Good, good, good. Jen says, can clones and robots do FRL? Reminds me of Blade Runner. Thank you for your question. So I don't think that FRL can turn a clone or a synthetic or artificially created being. I don't think that it can turn them into a natural being. I think that if a clone or synthetic replicant were able to do the flying rainbow lasagna, I think that what would happen is they would recognize that they have been artificially created and that they are not a naturally occurring being, and that they can't get to where they want to get to from their present position. It's like if your desire is to be a violin virtuoso in the symphony, and you look at your life position and you're like, well, where I live, my country, my language, my body, everything about me, I have zero chance of ever making it to the symphony and being the virtuoso that I want to be. Then you might have to be like, okay, like I have to pretty much rewind and start from the beginning and get into a completely different position to be able to become a genetic virtuoso and actually achieve divine union. So I think that if a clone or synthetic replicant or whatever, if they were able to flying rainbow lasagna, I think they would have the insight that they're artificially created, that they can't get to their destination on their current pathway, and that they need to kind of rewind to go back to the beginning to even have any kind of a shot. So again, like I say, it's not going to make something that's evil more evil. If a demon flying rainbow lasagna, you know what they would do? They would do pretty much the same thing. They would go to entropy. Our Pedro says, are people feeling the distortion and that's why they are considering moving their chakras? Yes, people are feeling limited and constrained by their wobbly chakras. So instead of saying, hey, let's stabilize my chakras, it's just like if your tires on your car had a problem with the wheel alignment and it made your car vibrate on the highway and you couldn't get to where you wanted to go. So one solution would be to get rid of your tires, and then they will not vibrate and make, road noise because they're out of alignment on your car. But you then also do not have tires to drive on the highway. So that my solution for the car is get a wheel alignment so that your thing doesn't shake apart. And my solution for your chakras, again, is to make them not wobble around like this, get them nice and stabilized so that we can fly through, time in a more effective way. So, yes. Jose Marino, good to see you, asks, are big organisms more sophisticated than smaller organisms? Usually, yes. Usually, multicellular organisms are more sophisticated and contain greater levels of consciousness complexity than single-celled organisms, or less. So, usually, yes. Yvette says, if we continue to loop from dying to being reborn, how does this tie into the false reincarnation system that has been in place by the Draco? So in this diagram that I showed to you, there's that, recycling until you finally get in alignment with your true central path. And that's reincarnation essentially, or many iterations within one lifetime. So this little area down here is just one lifetime. And you have at least 4 that are part of this one chakra, and you have many, many chakras, and many of them all throughout your body. So the answer is that we're experiencing all of these different lives, individuated lives concurrently, and that our journey of going from being askew to being in alignment is happening in parallel in all of those lines at the same time. So let's say we might have one life where we're all Neanderthals sitting around a campfire having a chat, and in another life we're in the Roman Empire and we're centurions, sharpening our swords. And in another life we're here talking on the video conference computer. And all of our lives are happening concurrently and simultaneously. So all at the same time, our ancient Neanderthal self and Roman Empire self and our modern self are all learning these life lessons that bring us into alignment with our perfected, divinity or perfected aspect of self. They're all happening at the same time. So it's not like first my Neanderthal self realizes it's divine, then I realize I'm divine in the future, then I realize I'm divine in the Roman Empire. It's not a linear experience. So a big part of our inner metamorphosis is a re-understanding or recalibration of understanding time, to no longer think of it as a linear first, second, third type of thing that happened. But you were asking about the false reincarnation system that's happening with the Draco. It is happening on every level. It is why we have to reincarnate so many times within our own life. So we're not supposed to have to go through every single possible death before we find eternal life on any of our lives or on any of our timelines. So we're not supposed to have to be recycled at all. We're supposed to not experience death, not supposed to hit the membrane of death at all. That's why I say over and over, death is the aberration. It is a thing that is not supposed to exist. We're supposed to have a perfect pathway here into the physical and then back into the realm of pure abstraction without ever dying. And that would be a very, very different life experience and different social experience if we had that straight path. Salu says, Yvette, well, they keep on feeding off our energy and we continue to die. I understand it is not necessarily a choice to die. We can make a choice not to die. So if you come here and you get programmed with the inevitability of death, then it might take someone else coming along on a video like this and saying, wait, death is not inevitable. You have another choice. And then you can actually make a choice. And you don't actually have to choose to keep on dying. We'll read the next one. Yvette says, but are we smacking into their membrane of death or ours? Oh, okay. So there's only one membrane of death. It's not like it is owned by the Evo occupiers of the interstices. It's not like that's their home and we're coming into their, oh, pardon me, I didn't mean to go into your yard. Oh, sorry, my dog went into your yard. No, it's not like that at all. All of this is us. They're not actually supposed to be living on the membranes of death. Nothing is supposed to live on the membranes of death. So what I usually use is the analogy of that little hallway in my home here. So if I want to go from my studio into my bedroom, I got to walk through a little hallway. What if there's squatters? What if someone breaks into my house and decides like, oh, that Aurora's hallway is now our home. And we're going to put it like a little campfire over here. We're going to put our sleeping bag over here. And Aurora's not allowed to go from her studio workroom into her bedroom. And she's not allowed to because we live here now. That is essentially what these demonic occupiers of the interstices did. They took the membrane that is supposed to be like a transit place between worlds, a hallway that you go from point A to point B. And they said, we are going to come here as squatters and we're going to set up a little campfire. And we're going to cook little mini hot dogs, like, hobos cooking over a little campfire. And they've been camped out there for like 10 or 15,000 years. So they have, they're acting like it's their spot. They're like, this is our spot, get out. But the truth is, it's actually our spot. It's actually my spot. It's actually your spot. They're not actually supposed to be there. So that's, again, part of this whole recalibration of getting to understand, like, that's not they don't own that spot. They're not supposed to be there. They're not supposed to be there at all, and kind of getting rid of the squatters and sending them to where they're supposed to be. So Yvette says, all things considered with the false matrix, should we stay away from the light or look for the right one? We do not actually have to die. So the basis of your question is, after we die, should we go to the light? Should we not go to the light? What should we do? And my answer to you is you should not die. So it's, if you die, you shouldn't, the light is a recycling center. Yes. If you die, what you should do is go to entropy as quickly as possible. And going to entropy means you recognize that you died. You're like, hey, 1 minute ago, I was riding my car. Then the next minute, I was smashed up on the highway. Now I'm here. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm dead. So instead of being like, wow, I hope that I hold on to my consciousness and my sense of self. I hope that I still keep on thinking that I'm Aurora, the person with long hair and a rainbow sweater that lived on Earth in 2018. No, you say, wow, I'm no longer that person. That's not my sweater. Then I no longer live on Earth in 2018. And you return to your abstract form, because all of us were abstract consciousness. And then we come here and we grow long hair and we say, I'm that person with the long hair, but you're not that person with the long hair. The long hair is temporary. So you go to entropy, you release your sense of self and your temporal ego, and then go back to the beginning and try it all again. And, try to come at it from a different perspective. So in order to ascend, you do not die. So it's not like if you get smashed up on the highway, you see yourself bloody and dead, then you have the option like light or ascension, like right turn, make the ascension instead. It's not like that. What you would experience is, oh, look, I almost had an accident on the highway, but I totally didn't get smashed up. And then I drove to my favorite restaurant and I had a great sandwich with my friend, and then went home and, wrote a masterpiece. That is ascension. It is a seamless transition from, levels of constraint into levels of unconstraint. Like, let's say on one timeline, you died, right? You're smashed up on the highway. Oh, well, here, Nicole is a lovely example of this. She's a member of this class, and she learned about flying rainbow lasagna. And I'm not sure if she was listening to an audio or what was going on. She had a near wreck on the highway, but she didn't actually get wrecked. She saw because she was thinking about flying rainbow lasagna. She saw the car coming into her lane, and then she saw it overlapping. And she said that she saw two different realities, one of which where the other car smashed her car. But then she found the other reality where she had moved into the other lane, somehow miraculously not smashed. That's what ascension will be like. It will not be like, oh, I found myself smashed, but then I, rose up and was raptured and, was hugged by Jesus. That is not it. It would be like, wow, I was gonna die, but I didn't die, and now I'm still alive, and now I'm having the most wonderful, miraculous, expansive experience, and our bodies will change and transform. So as we go from being dense light to being, fast light, our bodies will change and transform, and we'll have a different experience of what it is to have a body. Yes, and as I'm saying, this is why it's hard. I say things, as I'm saying things, I'm like, oh, they're going to misinterpret it like this. Oh, that guy's going to misinterpret it like this. It's very hard because now I'm thinking of all the things. Oh, they're going to say this, or they're going to say, I'm trying to like, how can I get this out effectively? What will ascension feel? Because part of ascension is sitting quietly in meditation and having that experience of kindling from, this lower level of energy to a higher level of energy. Part of it is that, because I don't want you to think that it's just like, oh, I had a near-miss car accident, now I've ascended. Like, I don't want you to think that. It is the sense of going through a doorway. Like if I go through a doorway from one room to another room, I've entered into another room and I've crossed a threshold. When you do ascension, you will know that you have crossed a threshold and there are new rules or there's a new level of contextual experience in the place that you have just entered into. But the crossing of the threshold is not a death, and it does not involve violence. And it does not necessarily involve an immediate cessation of the sensation of having a body. So you can ascend and still feel a sense of, wow, I have a body and an individuated body. Like I still have arms, I still have legs. That will change as you have more experiences in your expanded state. I guess that's the best way I can say it. Like you're not going to deal with the same rules. You're not going to deal with the same rules or limitations of where you get your food or where you get your energy from, what level of waste you produce. Like when you ascend, there's no more death. And there's no more dead skin cells, and there's no more dead hair, and there's no more eating of physical food that you then have to digest and poop out. Like things change on a profound level. And okay, I know there will be more questions on that. Keep on going. Keep on going. It's getting to be a long recording. Okay, so Lucy says, Yvette, I don't see it as their membrane. Good, I like this. Not ours, just a place where beings aren't supposed to be. Very good, Souther. Thank you for that. I personally don't look for any light. I delve into my own darkness and unknown. And so in the process, the unconscious within me comes to light. Aurora is like a lighthouse for me, shows me truth, guides me, and helps me to feel less alone. Oh, I'm very happy to hear that. And that's the idea. Like we should definitely all be encouraging one another, inspiring one another on the journey. And yeah, if I did that hiking trail already, and then I came over to here, I'm going to tell everybody, hey, watch out for those rocks over there. They're kind of, you could slip on that spot and watch out, don't fall off a cliff over there. That is exactly what I would do. So that is how I look at my journey. And so I describe, I'm thinking now about how I've spoken about ascension and the process of it. I describe myself as ascending. I'm an ascending master. I don't say that I'm an ascended master because look, guys, I still have a physical body. I'm drinking a bunch of water. Like I'm going to go eat some dinner with my little dog over here. Like that's, if you have ascended, then you do not have a need for physical food anymore. And I predict that we will all reach that culmination, we'll reach that level. So one of the things about ascension that, and this is like literally ascension, this is like the 20th week of the class. I'm doing this in the first week of the class. So everything is backwards. It's totally okay. Ascension used to be something that was in ancient Atlantis, something that was done singly. Like, imagine one person is running a marathon around a track and everyone else is in the stands while they watch that one athlete and you're really rooting for them. Be like, go, 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 keep going. That's what it used to be like. And what I predict ascension will be like in this experience, it will be planetary ascension with every single one of us running the marathon, and every single one of us rooting each other on in our personal development. So not a sense, it's never about competition, but in this sense, it is about a mass migration, not one single person. So what it used to be in ancient Atlantis, nobody died. Here's what happens. You came here, you became embodied. You slowed down light to physical densified matter while maintaining your connection to the divine and to the stellar network and everything. Had wonderful experiences without having to eat food or poop. Had wonderful experiences, were totally supported and nourished by all of the non-physical food and vibration and love, literally, that is here. Wrote music, sang, made artwork, made projects with other people, had lovers, had love affairs. When you've done that for however many thousands of years, you've done all the love affairs and you've done all of the adventuring and you've done all of the creativity, then you're ready to transform. It's like, I've eaten every sandwich there is to eat on this planet. I'm ready to transform. That's when a person would ascend, and a person would sit in this like energy field and begin to transform into a higher dimensional, less dense state, while all of your friends and family and everyone who knew you in your life, in your, physical slowed down state, everybody knew you and is basically standing around you and rooting you on and saying, like, raise your vibration, go, 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 raise your vibration. And then it's not sadness, because this is not death. And then when you ascend, you've raised your vibration, you've kindled, you're now a being of light. It's not like you're non-accessible. You're still accessible, but you live in a world of pure light. So the people who were like, go, 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 they didn't feel like they were losing you. They didn't feel like, oh no, because when you have a loved one who's dying, you're holding on to them. I used to have a beautiful cat and she died. And I was like, no, don't die. I'm like holding on to her. It's like, no, that's not what it was like, because like, my cat is dead. I don't see her and talk with her every day. We're separated. That's not the way it was in the ancient time of Atlantis, the antediluvian sophisticated world. Nobody died. When you ascend, it's not like you're inaccessible anymore. So you are still communicative, you're still accessible, you're still part of everything that's going on. So it wasn't this sense of grief and loss and separation that we all take as a matter of course, as a part of the human experience of, like, we define that as that death is inevitable and that the suffering and the separation and grief and loss is part of the natural landscape of emotions. And that's actually not truthful at all. So what's different now is that it's not like, oh, that's like Cheeky. Cheeky is going to be running around doing her ascension, and we're all in the stands going like, go Cheeky, become God, you're doing awesome. What's going to happen is we're all running together. We're all running I'm running the marathon, Cheeky's running the marathon, all of the trees and all of the crickets outside are all running the marathon together, and we're all rooting each other on and saying, yes, yes, we can do this. The planet is doing this. We're all doing this at the same time. And it's also why I say, like, don't look for dates on the calendar like December 5th, it's going to be a big date. 11/11 is going to be a big date. Any of these dates that are going to be a big date. Any date can be a big date. It has to do with when we get our collective SHIT together to do this marathon. Let me get through the rest of the questions. Everybody, oh my God, there's 49 more questions. So this is just all a matter of perspective and what position of perspective one is operating at in reference to dimension. Absolutely, I'm really agreeing with you. A big part of this is about your viewpoint and how you are perceiving things. Dominic, it's wonderful to see you, and I need to collaborate with you. It's great to see you, man. Thank you. Dominic says, is time like an elastic band? Great question. Constantly being stretched and released, creating a constant rhythm of fast and slow. So now is now, but sometimes it is straight, but others it is wavy. I like your question. And I don't necessarily see it as an elastic band. However, I do see it as changeable, like mutable, able to be changed, shifted, and transformed, or going through a process. Just like when I see a garden with plants, like time is a living being. It's and I'm definitely seeing it as it's not static. It's dynamic, and it metabolizes. It's responds to stimuli and what is happening, but I haven't seen it as something that like this or like this, but it definitely changes and transforms, just like I was saying, like that river that can flow in different directions. Pedro says a sixth dimensional being sounds like the character Trans Gemini from the TV show Andromeda, I don't know that one, who was an avatar of a sun but could see different possible futures. Yes, that's awesome. That sounds really interesting. Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting character. So Lou says, is the 10th dimension total awareness white light? Boom. Much like the 0th dimension, except it's not. Yes. Boom. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful insight. That's exactly right. That these points, like the 0th dimension and the 10th dimension, like these are nodes. They're fractal miniature microcosmic realities. So fractal means the same structure, but just at a macroscopic or microscopic level. So yes, all of these same patterns and structures keep on being repeated at a tiny level and a larger level and a larger level. Absolutely spot on with that. Pedro says, is there a limit or are there infinite dimensions? Really good question. Science says that there's a limit. Aurora, and cosmic galactic person says that there's infinite dimensions. Like, uncountable, I guess is the way that I would describe it. Jen says, seeing flashing lights can sometimes be a medical issue. That's how I understand. Yeah, Sully's laughing, LOL. I don't mean it to be insensitive, just sounded funny. I know. And Pedro's joking, it's a trap, like, from that movie. The Pooties are getting desperate and want to keep us all under control. On the subject of the Pooties and control and the harvest agenda trap. So it used to be one person would, just like it used to be Ascension was an individual event, and now it is a mass event. Same thing with death. Don't mean to freak anybody out here, but our planet is facing a choice: either ascend or face the physical death. If the planet faces the physical death, it means all of her inhabitants do too. That means you and me and all the redwood trees and all the microbes and all the butterflies that are here would die a physical death. So what these Pooties actually want to do on this planet, and what they've done on other planets, is harvest all awareness, harvest all of the consciousness here. What if you press a big red button and you blow up the planet and everything that's on that planet dies instantaneously? Then you get to scoop up all of those dead consciousnesses that now no longer have physical containers to occupy. And their agenda is to, I call it, upload it into a virtual reality, that they put it into a technologically based container for consciousness. And they might even tell you that it's Christian heaven or some crap like that, or that it's really great and that you're going to be totally free when you go in. It's like, get into this cage, you'll be totally free, I swear. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. So the question is not just, can I get one moth to fly to the flame? That's how it's been for many thousands or tens of thousands of years. Now it is, how can I get the entire planetary awareness and all of its occupants, like moths, to fly to the flame? That's what they've been trying to do. And so you must use all of your inner skepticism to bypass any of the consciousness traps they're trying to put you into. So that's what the blue avians, it comes from the law of one and the raw materials. I do not mean to be offensive to anyone when I say this. Those channeled materials come from the CIA, that a lot of people who do channeling are actually getting synthetic telepathy, voice to skull, and that guy was totally influenced by the CIA, or let's say intelligence communities who use synthetic telepathy, not ascended masters. He was not channeling ascended masters. So again, he wasn't connecting directly to the sun and the stellar network and all of that beautiful abstract consciousness. He was connecting to the clouds that obstruct us. And those clouds are basically saying, yes, get on board of my flying saucer. I'll take you someplace really great. When really what they were, it's like, I want to eat you. I want to eat you. And come into, like said the spider to the fly, right? Come inside of my web. I'm looking so hungry right now. So that is the agenda. And that's what all of this, this is why I feel agitation or anger or emotions that motivate me when I see people who are deceivers. When I see like the David Wilcock, Corey Good, Blue Avian cult, Jordan Souther thing, they are playing with fire. They're actually telling people stuff that is going to get those people harmed. And the harm is saying, trust these beings, they're really great. And meanwhile, you are getting harvested into a hell realm. Yeah, when you get harvested into that fake virtual reality Christian fantasy land, it's actually not very fun at all. It's more suffering. It's more, and you think this world is bad with the levels of banking iniquity and health issues and degradation of consciousness and lack of freedom here? You think that's bad? It's worse. in the place where they want to harvest you to. It's totally a hell realm of, complete and utter suffering. So yeah, they're very hungry and they want to try to eat everybody. And I'm like, no, you don't get to eat everybody. And that's why they hate me, because they're like taking food out of our mouth. Yeah, Pedro says, but they are losing. Keep your chakras. That's absolutely right. Not only are they losing, but ascension is inevitable. So think about this. As we are going through all of our many various iterations, trying to find the pathway out of here, so is the planet. Planet's looking for the pathway out of here. Planet's looking for the wormhole. Planet is trying to get into alignment as opposed to hit the membrane of death. And that involves all of us and all the things that we are doing. We're part of the planet transcending death and ascending instead of dying. Sally says, don't worry, your chakras aren't going anywhere. Good. Because that, just between you and me, guys, that's what it kind of feels like to me. It feels like you can't actually remove chakras, and the assertion is ridiculous, and that someone would be so unethical to offer to do something that's impossible for money is disturbing, and then doubly disturbing that someone would be so compliant and naive as to believe in that and actually give them money to do it. Like I see there's exploitation happening on many levels, and it's disturbing. Like if you saw a blind person that was, being exploited in some way by other people around them, they'd be like, that's not cool. Don't do that to that guy. And so Lou says, it makes a good point. Aren't your chakras essentially you though? Yes, they are you. These energy centers are all you. They're various timelines of possibilities and probabilities that are you. So if I took away your chakras, what I would basically be saying is, I'm going to take all of the timelines and possibilities and probabilities that, you could experience as an embodied human, and I'm going to, put them in a jar and shake them all up. And I'm going to mix everything up into some kind of, conglomeration that's like random, that doesn't make sense. Like that doesn't seem good to me. Joelle says, I think the inner movie screen is just my way of describing my inner space. And yes, Aurora, most of the time it's just color, formless light, and shapes. But sometimes I do see beings and earthly things. Discernment is definitely important, and I try to always question what I'm seeing. Good. I'm just cautioning for discernment. Like it's your own apparatus, and you're allowed to use it as you want to. So I would never say like, don't do this, always do this, but just use your discernment, understanding that unethical beings can beam stuff in there and make you think all sorts of things. I've literally had people that approached me that said like, oh, I had a visionary experience and I saw you and you were my wife and you're supposed to marry me. And I had to, gently tell them like that was a flight of fancy, and you weren't actually seeing the future, and I don't want to marry you. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like these can be very dangerous distortions that are beamed inside of people that can make them act psychotic. Chloe says, does it mean anything if you are only seeing a certain color in your inner projections mind when you are meditating? I tend to see only green. I would say that if you are seeing a particular color, you are looking out like through those lenses, and green would be unconditional love. Like that would be a positive color to see. I think that would be good. Jen says, so is Ascension the blending of the timelines? Ooh, really good question. Ascension is a supersession or a transcendence, a moving beyond this level of timelines, but not a transcendence of all timelines. So if I draw it like a picture, clear it all out. Clear it all out. So this is the time vortex, and this line going up the middle is Ascension, and it goes to infinity. But I was telling you about how when energy circulates around, like in the figure eights, it goes big figure eight, smaller figure eight, smaller figure eight, smaller, smaller, smaller. Like it doesn't stop. It keeps on going. So what happens when you go through this little wormhole over here is you then find yourself in the next level of reality, which is a slightly smaller chakra, a slightly smaller time vortex, which then you should, do the seamless integration and just keep on. These should all be just going up the center. If the reality is structured perfectly, these should all be like this, right? So that you never actually have to change your trajectory, but you just keep going up the center. I don't want to give you like wrong information, but I think sometimes what's going on is that it's skew. I think here, let's find a different color. I think sometimes what happens is you have to start off at the periphery again. If we draw this green one over here, it's like we went up the center. We finally figured that out, and now we're starting here, but here we're starting from the edge again. So then we have to go through all this rigmarole again in order to go up to the middle. So I don't want that to be truthful. What I want to be truthful is that you stay on, like you're on this ascension timeline, you ascend, you make it through this wormhole, find yourself in a new reality. There's new rules of reality. There's new like rules of the playground, and then you master those rules of the playground and you make it up to here. I don't want to make it so that you then have to die a million times again in order to figure out the rules of the next place. So I hope that I hope my words have described that effectively. So this is Chloe, that's a good question. And I see purple splodge whenever I let the beam go up my spine and get out of my thinking mind. That's interesting, because if you're seeing purple, then you're getting all the way up to here, which is your connection to the divine. Joelle says, I've always wondered the same thing about the colors too. Oh, that's interesting. Seeing green and blue indigo swirling together most of the time. So not on this recording, but on a future recording, and I do this, every semester, I've got a class that's all about how the different chakras touch one another, like where they meet and where they touch, that there's significance to that. So that's part of the advanced class, and this recording is very long. We'll get to that in future weeks, but I'll tell you all about it. Yes, Pedro says you ascend with your body, not just your consciousness. Big, huge takeaway point. Everybody here thinks when you die, you separate from your body, right? Here's my body and here's my spirit. During my life, I lived with them together. When I died, my body stayed behind and my spirit flew somewhere else. When you ascend, here's your body and here's your spirit or your consciousness or whatever. They don't separate. They go to the next place together. This is really big, because I do think that people in this time and place treat their bodies as burdensome and disposable. People don't like that. They're like, I don't like my freckles. I don't like my eye color. I can't wait to die and throw away my body and then get reincarnated and finally get, blue eyes or whatever you want. Like, that is not the right attitude. And also, here's another idea. The idea like, okay, I got to pay my rent and I got to pay my car insurance and I got to buy groceries too. I'll pay my rent and pay my car insurance. And then if I'm lucky, like I'll buy the worst cheap frozen pizza for my own body, like to stay alive. That is totally backwards, because I'm telling you this, your car does not fuel your ascension, and your rental or mortgage payment does not fuel your ascension, but your physical corporeal body fuels your ascension, and you cannot fuel your ascension on cardboard pizzas. So it is really important for people to not think of their bodies as disposable and to invest in your body as if it's something that you're going to be utilizing for a long time, because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be utilizing your body for a really long time. It does not necessarily mean that your body will stay in this format. And it also does not mean, like, if you have a physical deficit, like I got brain damage. That does not mean that my ascension body will have brain damage or that I'll be limited in the form that I transform into. So I'm trying to say this because some people might have a spinal injury that prevents you from walking. You might have whatever metabolic issues, might have diabetes, might have any kind of thing, might have amputations of your legs. None of that stops you from ascending, because I don't want you to think like, oh no, if somebody chopped off my foot, then I couldn't ascend. You could still ascend. That's part of the truth that I'm living in this body, is that even if you have neurological damage, you can still ascend. It's like I say, you when you make a magic spell, you don't just make a magic spell and then write it down as words. You live it as your truth. That is part of the magic spell that I'm living as my truth in this body. Theoretically, I should not be able to do all these things that I do, not only walking and talking, but making, complex calculations and paintings and all these things. I do it anyway, even with neurological damage. And I know that I can, reach the highest levels of spiritual development, even with neurological damage. So I want everyone to know that your body matters, and it is eternal, and it fuels your ascension, and you take its elements with you, and you can ascend even if you have been profoundly injured. If you have your legs amputated or brain injured or spine injured, you can still do all of these things. And that's also a big part of flying rainbow lasagna. It is performing the impossible and redefining it. Pedro says, today is the big date always. That's a big takeaway. That is very big, because ascension is a spontaneous decision. And it is not something that you have to, like I say, wait for external permission to do. And also like, so all these things, all these psyops that are like, it's time for the event. It's time for the thing that's going to find the thing. It's like, no, the thing might not be external, and the thing might also be an exterior reflection of our own internal transformation. Sarah Jane is giving me a beautiful compliment. Thank you very much for writing that. She says that I'm awesome, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. Make me blush. Sally says she doesn't think it's the divine connection, but a purpose. So I'm guessing indigo. Yeah. And I would also, you know, something, when we are little tiny infants, when we first come into this world in our human bodies, mostly our eyes are not clear. Like the world is amorphous. Things look like shapes and blobs and colors, and everything is not very clearly defined. And as we continue to grow and have experiences in the physical realm, our eyesight clears and we begin to see more clearly. Hold on, I'm drinking. We can see more clearly, and we can also correctly interpret what we're seeing. That's been my experience of seeing with my insight, with my inner vision. You know, it feels like it, in large part, the early perceptions were amorphous. And like I could see a lot of stuff was going on, but I couldn't make sense of it. And things seemed kind of blurry and I didn't get it. And then as I grew and as I developed, things came into clarity. And I started, it's like learning language. When you're a little tiny infant, you know, you hear sounds even when you're in your mother's womb, and you hear sounds when you're outside of the womb. And at a certain point, you're like, these are just abstractions. They're just sounds. They're just words. And then at a certain point, you start to be like, wait a minute. Every time they say that word, I get this taste in my mouth. And you start to figure out its language. So that's my prediction is for everyone in this class that you might right now be at the level of, you know, being an infant, just starting to put together these patterns and make these, you know, connections inside, but that it all does come into a state of, you get clarity the more that you experience it. It does become clear. Oh, that's exactly what Pedro just said. He just said, you guys have baby higher vision. That is exactly right. That's a very, very good description. I feel like, Pedro, you are very good at taking all of everything that I say and condensing it down into like a very, you know, concise phrase. That is very good. Okay, so guys, this has been a wonderful class. Thank you so much. This is a very long recording. Thank you for being with me, for the people in the class and the people who took the time to watch this whole entire thing. Here's the deal. Here's what we're doing. Taking a 2-week break because this is holiday season, and we've got, first of all, happy winter solstice, Merry Christmas, and merry other holidays that are going on right now. Happy New Year. I know lots of people are going to be focused on family things and parties and shopping and food and everything like that. Enjoy all of your wonderful holidays. It's part of the fun of being here. And then we will assemble, I think it's January 2nd, immediately after New Year's, and then we will begin the semester for real in earnest. So I'm wishing everyone super wonderful, safe, happy holidays, awesome, super fantastic New Year's, and yeah, thank you. May all good things flow to you. Thank you so much. So, and as always, I keep the enrollment links or whatever always in the description. Everybody, you're welcome. I encourage you and invite you to enroll. And if you haven't yet, scroll down at those links. You'll find a lot of the most relevant lessons are enabled for free preview, because again, I want everybody to learn about this stuff. I don't want to keep any of this stuff a secret. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Oh, wait, I got to stop this.